So I've always wanted to write a novel, and now I have, but I hadn't always wanted to design the book cover for my novel. That dream came later as throughout the years I picked up more skills in graphic design, and I also really started watching book cover trends, and I'm fascinated by book cover trends. So now that I've written a novel and I'm publishing it soon, it needs a cover. So of course, I'm going to design it myself. And I'm so excited about this project. So I'm going to be taking you along for the ride of the 5 days of book cover design that I went through. So what book are we designing the cover for? It's a historical fantasy romance, which is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice with dragon riders. It's a dramatic book, both in the sense of dramatic romantic angst and dramatic death-defying dragon races. So we need the book cover to convey like all of that. We want someone to look at the book cover and get an idea and a feel for what the book is. Let's get cracking. Day one of this whole escapade is just planning, because I was serious about needing to go in with the right market research. So I say like day one, and I did have one day of like rigorous planning, but I have been collecting data on what a historical fantasy romance Pride and Prejudice retelling cover should look like for like a year. Because like I said, I'm obsessed with tracking cover trends. So here's some covers that I collected in that similar genre, covers that I really admired and wanted to emulate. A tricky thing about book cover design is you want the book cover to stand out, you want your book cover to look unique and grab people's attention, but you also want the book cover to fit in, because the book cover needs to convey the genre. And how does it do that? Through complying with the current genre trends in book covers, right? So we both have to find out what the trends are and comply with them, but also put some unique touches on it. So the first task of my brainstorming day was looking at all of these covers that I'd collected over the course of months and writing a list of what did they have in common, what did I want my cover to include. So first up, looking at these, I see so many pretty color palettes. Romance books nowadays are really hitting it out of the park with like gorgeous color schemes, and historical fantasy romance is no different, so I also want mine to have a gorgeous color scheme. We'll figure out what that means later. Here's some more covers that I collected that are specifically new releases that are historical fantasy romance-ish. So looking at these books, something that a lot of them have in common is a sort of border element. You can see the border has come in different shapes and sizes, but there's often a border, and that is really one of the indicators of this is a historical fantasy romance novel. And even if you, as the consumer, hadn't noticed that like consciously, still unconsciously, the border gives off that vibe, right? So my cover should have some sort of border element. I also see here with the color palettes, I'm seeing a lot of like magenta, indigo, and green. So we might play with those colors as we go. One of the questions that I'm asking myself is, do I want people on my cover? Because some of these covers I'm looking at have people and some of them don't, and I could go either way. And I personally like looking at the covers better that don't have people on them as a personal preference, so I think that's the direction that I'm going to go. And I think I want to emphasize that this is a dragon book, because dragons are fun and awesome, right? So I think instead of having people on the cover, I'm going to have dragons. And I would love if maybe those dragons were like integrated into the border somehow, like these examples I've collected. There's also the question of what kind of font do I want? In these collected covers of historical fantasy romance, there aren't a lot of font trends, honestly. There's like serifs and sans serifs and skinny fonts and bold fonts, and it kind of goes all over the map. So I can pick whatever font I want. I want it to be pretty. So I'm going to do a lot of searching and find some pretty fonts. I also like the formality of a serif font. I think it does give it a little bit more of that historical edge, so I think I'm gonna stray towards serif fonts. We'll see. There's the question of how do I want these dragons to look on my cover, and I love this example from the Ornithologist Field Guide to Love, where it's kind of like a woodcut style of illustration, and I think that just looks so good. So I think I'm gonna try to find something in that style-ish. I also still need to pick and finalize the title of my book. I want the title to first convey that this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling. It's gotta have some Pride and Prejudice-y words in there. Like we've got some examples here of the Austen Affair and the shocking experiments of Miss Mary Bennet, two historical fantasy romances that are coming out soon. And I'm excited to read these. There's also a trend in the genre right now to have longer titles. Obviously not all of them are long, but a good number of them are. And I do like the sound of a long title. I do think it also invokes kind of the historicalness of having like a title and a subtitle and stuff. So here's my brainstormed idea. The Dragoneers of Longbourn and Pemberley says Pride and Prejudice retelling with dragons, also has the vibes I want. It's got everything I want in a title. So let's start building a color scheme. I think The important things to me is I want it to be pretty and I want it to have good contrast, some bright colors and some dark colors. And this is going to get reworked a lot as we're designing the cover, but I want to brainstorm anyway. I've also gathered a lot of Pride and Prejudice retellings covers to see if there was any trends that I also wanted to hit in that subgenre. And looking at them, there aren't a lot of trends. For the ones that are more basic historical romance, there's a lot of kind of like sepia toned and woman in Regency dress facing away from the camera, but that's not quite my subgenre of book either, so I don't think I'm going to participate in that trend. And here are some Pride and Prejudice fantasy retellings covers I've collected to look at ideas. And you can see here there's a trend of like a sparkle around that Regency woman facing away from the camera. And I don't think that's quite what I'm going for, because I'm not going to include a person on my cover, I've already decided. But I'll keep the sparkle in mind. Might include that. So let's brainstorm some color scheme ideas. I love how many covers use like a gold tone, so I think I want to grab some samples of some different golds so I can kind of get an idea of the range that people are using. I've also collected some famous Pride and Prejudice covers, and here I discovered a color trend that I want to use, which is a peacock blue-green kind of shade. There's a long history of using peacocks on the covers of Pride and Prejudice dating back to one of the earlier editions of Pride and Prejudice. And I love that family of shades of like dark teal that's peacock blue-green, and like I want to use that on my cover, both because it's a beautiful color that would also go good with the gold I'm collecting, and also just like I love the history of it being a Pride and Prejudice-y color. And I'm certainly not the only book designer who has participated in this color trend. You can see a lot of the Pride and Prejudice retellings also use this peacock shade. And I really love the color palette of the Austen Affair in particular, so I think I'm going to pull out the color palette of this one so I can look at it more critically. And this isn't the exact palette I'm going for, it's a little bit more neon than I think I'm going to go, we'll see. But it is in the ballpark of what I want the cover to look like. I like how it uses its blues and greens and brings in a pink as well, to kind of give that romance pop. So now let's brainstorm my own. We need a peacock color, a gold, and a pink. So I went a long time here playing around with a lot of different color scheme ideas, really getting my shades just right. But then later, I kind of revamped the entire color scheme thing, and I'll give you a better tour of it when we get there, okay? So here's my draft going into the cover design that I brainstormed, and it's going to get reworked quite a bit. So now that we have the basic elements I want in my cover and a draft color scheme, let's sketch out the cover. What do I want it to look like? A peacock background with a gold frame around. Grabbing a quick serif font, here's my title on there, The Dragoneers of Longbourn and Pemberley, but of course I'd center this and space it better. And maybe adding some more decoration everywhere, letting it look a little busy, and then adding in a green dragon and a red dragon, which are the main dragons in my book. Of course, the Elizabeth character's dragon and the Darcy character's dragon. Very fun. That is the plan. Let's see how much it actually ends up resembling this cover in the end, eh? But that is day one, brainstorming, planning. For day two, it was just finding fonts and stock images to use on my cover. It took hours of searching to find ones that I really loved. So I didn't bother screen recording it. In retrospect, I wish I had. But I went out in search of specific elements. I wanted some beautiful frames. I could have designed them myself, but I thought I could probably find better ones online to purchase. And I wanted to find either dragons, either in stock images or an artist I liked to commission them. I ended up finding some really good stock images that I'll show you in a second that I'm super happy with. And also finding some good fonts that said historical fantasy romance and getting a lot of fun options there. And then I searched for fonts for so long that I found like 6 that I really loved. And I'm like, I can't narrow this down. So then I decided, let's put it to a poll. Let's make some mock-up cover designs, send a poll out to my patrons, and see what they choose. And that is what I spent day 3 doing, was making mock-up covers to send out in a poll. So here are the dragons that I found. Isn't it gorgeous? It's not exactly that woodcut style that I was going for, but it's very close. It's very encyclopedia sketch, which I adore. I think it looks so good. So these are the 2 that I've decided to put on the cover specifically. Let's move those over, put them somewhere on the cover. And I've got so many frames to choose from because I bought a big pack of these frames illustrations to use, and now I need to pick one. But it's so hard because they're all so gorgeous. So let's narrow it down to a top 3. I really loved at first these arch ones where they have a rounded top. But once I got it on the mock cover and started moving things around, I decided it took up like too much space there at the top and decided against it. But I think I've narrowed it down to my top 3 picks. Here they are. Option 1, option 2, option 3. So I don't just want to put these frames in the poll as is. I want them in context so people can decide if they look good next to the dragons and stuff. So we have to make a more thorough mock-up cover. So let's put in a font and color the dragons. Here's one of my potential fonts. I'll show you the rest in a second. Let's arrange how it might be on the cover. Along with my name, Chloe Cahenzli, in one of the other potential fonts, just to get some variety. Then I put the dragons about where I wanted them and colored them in with my draft color scheme. And there's the mock-up, and it looks so good. I'm so happy with these. Obviously, it's got a long way to go before it's completely polished, but like, I'm seeing a lot of potential with this. So let's export that with my top 3 frames. Option 1, the maximalist, option 2, the minimalist, and option 3, the leafy cover. And adding all 3 of them to my poll document I'm setting up. So then here's the color scheme that I have right now, that I first drafted. And at this point I was realizing that I wasn't 100% happy with it, but I need to experiment and iterate and have a lot of variations to try to see where I could push it and where it should go. So I spent a few hours doing that. So that was palette 1. Let me run you through some of the other ones I made. For palette 2, I tried out greater contrast, darker darks, lighter lights. For palette 3, I decided to go more saturated and see what it would look like then. For number 4, I went greener. For number 5, I went more to the indigo side. For number 6, I decided to go all the way into purple range. And then I looked at those first 6 color schemes, trying to figure out what did I like about them, what didn't I like about them, where did I want to push these variations next. So number 7, I was just trying to make like my ideal color palette based on everything that I had learned so far through iteration. It took much experimenting and waffling back and forth, but eventually palette number 7 was born, and this one was the favorite that I had made so far. But I decided to push everything farther. What else could it look like? So palette 8 was a nearly black background, and I decided to get my gold by mixing the green and the pink I was using to make it a little bit more harmonious, and I liked how that turned out. So then for number 9, I decided to go the other way and make it a light blue cover, which was fun because then I had to change all the other colors too, so that was a little challenge. Number 10, I decided to make the background a medium light blue. So then, to put them on the poll, I decided against putting all 10 on the poll, so I decided like my top 5. So that ended up being number 7, 6, 3, 8, and 10. And yes, I put them on in that order. Sorry for the people who that bothers. But I also ended up turning on the setting that randomized the order that people would always see them in, so it was kind of moot. So that all went on the poll along with the questions about my top 4 fonts, which looked like this. And then the poll was ready to go out to the patrons and the friends and the family. So then technically at this point I did wait a few days for the responses to this poll to come in. So between day 3 of working on the book cover and day 4, there is a break. But then we get back into day 4 looking at the results of the poll, which was so exciting. So I got 21 responses. And let's see what the people have chosen. The fonts are often pretty neck and neck for what people like the best. But the Melvca font has won by a little bit. The Melvca font also scored very high on the question of like what suited a Pride and Prejudice fantasy retelling the best. So it was really looking like our top dog until you looked at the question of asking which font is the most legible, in which Melvca did not score very well at all. And I need people to be able to read the words on my cover. So I decided that I liked Melvca enough to put in the work to make it more legible. So I decided to increase the kerning, the spacing between letters, which did improve the readability immediately, I think. But I also wanted to do the harder work of getting rid of some of these internal curly cues, which look gorgeous, but do decrease readability, and I wanted to keep some of them for the gorgeous factor, but get rid of enough of them that you could easily skim the words on my cover, you know? So it's been a while doing that. And quite honestly, working on the font and arranging all of that took me all of day 4. So then we get into day 5. Continuing to arrange all the elements of the cover, let's look at what the poll had to say about the frames. Frame number 28 of the pack won the poll, which I am so happy about because it was my secret favorite. After looking at them for a while, that is the one I would have chosen as well, so I'm glad it won the poll. No conflict there. So I fixed the frame to make it better fit into the cover by kind of extending the middle section there so I didn't have to distort the square corners. So then we encountered a tragedy, which is I worked on this for like 2 more hours, arranging things, tweaking things here and there, and all of that footage, screen recording, got corrupted and no longer exists. So here it is. I'm about to present to you the 98% finished cover. We are jumping right to the end here. I arranged the words, I arranged the dragons, I finalized the color scheme, I did a lot of work, and I know, you'll just have to imagine all that process. But are you ready for the grand reveal then of here is the almost final cover, just needs a few final touches. In 3, 2, 1, here's where we're at. Isn't it gorgeous? I'm in love with it. So here are some fun details of this cover that I really enjoyed working on. I want to bring your attention especially to this orange curly Q arch up at the top, which did not come with the original frame design. But I kept thinking about those arches that I loved in the original frames, but didn't quite think it worked on a book cover. And then I thought we can bring in an internal arch kind of shape, copying the curly Qs of the arch, adding some of my own lines to connect everything. And I think it turned out splendidly. I love the look of it here at the top, and then also separating the cover and my name. Then I also wanted my cover to have texture. The flat color of just the peacock didn't quite look right, so I got this chunky oil painting palette knife texture that I really fell in love with, and melded that with the peacock blue background. It's subtle, if you hadn't pointed it out to me I probably wouldn't have noticed, but I think it makes the cover look a lot more polished and finished. Then I decided to rotate the green dragon just slightly so it would be looking at the red dragon a little better. It's a subtle detail, but I think it really helps sells the dynamic on the cover there. Then the ampersand. I went back and forth a lot with this. I originally had it as an and then I changed it to an ampersand, and I still didn't love the way it looked. I feel like it was too much white concentrated in one place on the cover and kind of looked unbalanced color-wise. So I tried making it smaller, I tried making it bigger, I liked that even less. So I decided to fix the ampersand in two ways. The first one was taking all of these little windows that were part of the original font and making them bigger so that the ampersand would just physically have less, that we'd have more of the background color peeking through. And then the other one was also just not making it white, making it more of a light gold color. And I also made the color of my name a gold color too, so that the first thing you see is really the title, the Dragoneers of Longbourn and Pemberley, in that bright contrasting white. So then here is the final cover. I spent about 5 days working on it on and off, and I love it so much. I'm so proud of this. It was such a good learning experience of designing covers, and I'm excited to redesign the cover of this book in 5 years or whatever, because wouldn't that be a fun? Here's the credits for the people who made the stock images and the fonts that I used. I feel so lucky that these people put their amazing work up online for me to buy a license for, and I'm very excited to have this cover made by humans and not AI. So comparing this cover to the original plan, I did keep with the vision mostly, but I think the bones of my vision to where it ended up all stayed pretty consistent. It was kind of funny that after I finished the cover, I sent it to my sister, and she had a comment oh, it looks just like that Pride and Prejudice cover. And I'm like, which Pride and Prejudice cover? And she was talking about this Pride and Prejudice cover, which I swear I didn't see before I ever designed mine. And I think it's really fun that my goal was to make my cover look Pride and Prejudice-y, right? And I completely nailed it on accident, making it look very similar to an existing Pride and Prejudice cover. And it felt like another mark of success in that I didn't copy this cover directly in any way, but we were both participating in the same Pride and Prejudice cover trends, and then ended up in about the same place. So if you want more news about my upcoming novel, when I announce the release date and all of that stuff, I've got a free email newsletter that you can sign up. I've linked it in the footnotes for you. And please do judge the book by this cover in the comments. What do you think the book's going to be like based on this? Thank you so much for watching.